Hello viewers, welcome to my channel De Facto with Naomi. Today we'll be talking about India's favorite neighbor, China, sarcastically speaking of course, and we will be looking into what is wrong with China. Classic China is playing its favorite game again. What game, you ask? It's the game of spreading cartographic propaganda, of cartographic aggression and cartographic misadventurism or adventurism, if you will. And this carto offensive needs to be understood in the light of a psychological warfare which is the stepping stone to China's expansionist policies. And what is cartographic aggression? It is the misrepresentation of maps to lay stake on the territories of other nations to bring more landmass into the control of your own territories. Now, what is slightly funny is that India's two other land neighbors, that is Nepal and Pakistan, did the same thing as recently as 2020. Nepal in 2020 lay stake to three of Indian territories, that is Lipu Lake, Limpiadura and Kalapani. And Pakistan depicted Junagadh and major portions of J&K in its own territory again in 2020. Now coming back to China, this carto-aggression needs to be understood in the light of China's wolf warrior strategy, which is basically the combative, confrontational and assertive style that has become quite popular under President Xi's rule. Basically, on 29th August 2023, China's Ministry of Natural Resources has released a new standard map which has caused ripple effects in two major parts of the world. One in India and second in the South China Sea. Now the question remains is, how does China go on legitimizing its claims on other territories? For India, what is important is Mao Zedong's five-finger policy, and for the South China Sea, it is the 9-dash line. This carto-aggression by China is deeply concerning for the littoral states of the South China Sea. So Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, Taiwan are deeply concerned. And Taiwan in this regard is especially important because if there is ever a military confrontation between Taiwan and the PRC, the US and Japan will likely step in and render support to Taiwan, thus leading to a multi-nation war. So in a nutshell, China stakes claims to several islands in the South China Sea. Spratly Islands, Scarborough Shoal, Paracel Islands to name a few. And these islands are also claimed by the other littoral states in the South China Sea. Now coming back to India and Mao Zedong's five-finger policy. According to it, Tibet is the right hand of China. And the five fingers are Arunachal Pradesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Ladakh and Sikkim. Tibet, the so-called right hand of China, came under the control of PRC in 1951 when they signed a 17-point agreement with the 14th Dalai Lama. Sikkim and Bhutan made news in 2017 after the Doklam standoff. And Doklam is something that the Chinese call it. The Indians call it Doka La, La as in pass. The carto-aggression of the Chinese again made headlines in 2020 when they claimed Bhutan's Sakteng Wildlife Sanctuary as their own. Border skirmishes are also fairly common in the Tawang sector of Arunachal Pradesh, and Ladakh made headlines during the fairly recent Galwan clashes. China's five-finger policy also made inroads into Nepal when it encroached and occupied several hectares of land in 7 border districts of Nepal, including in Humla and Gurkha in 2020. So this sums up PRC's expansionist and imperialist policies towards its neighboring states. China has also gone on to release a so-called list of standardized names, wherein it has accorded Chinese names to Indian villages, Indian peaks, Indian rivers, Indian cities and Indian towns. So China's modus operandi is fairly simple. It is also called China's salami slicing strategy and the nibbling like a silkworm strategy in international relations. They start off by encroaching upon the territories of other sovereign nations, and with small provocations. They then indulge in military deployment and build-up. After that, they claim legacy over those areas. They declare those areas as disputed territories and then indulge in dialogue and discussion to gain an upper hand in that discussion. In this regard, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, in an event conducted by NDTV on 29th August, when asked about China's new maps, went on to say that it is one of China's old habits. It stakes claim on territories that aren't its own, and just making absurd claims does not automatically make these territories yours. This would literally be as absurd as India staking claim to Sri Lanka, just because Sri Lanka was a part of the Chola Empire during the Sangam age. Or maybe as absurd as India staking claim to territories up till Afghanistan, just because we found a major rock edict of Ashoka in Kandahar. So what is wrong with China? Why is it behaving so absurdly? The timing of these maps is especially pertinent. The Economist reported that deflation and default haunt the Chinese economy. According to the Times of India, the Chinese economy is a ticking bomb. While the Financial Times is reporting that the Chinese shoppers hesitate to spend big, which means that even the domestic consumption or the private final consumption expenditure has also been hit by a slump. At this point, the Chinese economy is not merely decelerating, but is headed towards a complete collapse. Historically speaking, there are two chief ingredients to a nation's success at the global stage: a robust economy. The Chinese economy is dented with faults and fissures in every nook and cranny. And its military prowess. The Chinese PLA is not a battle-hardened army. So in a way, it is safe to conclude that China is experiencing a panic attack. Its real estate sector has plummeted. The Chinese economy is expected to grow at a meager 4.5 to 5.5% in 2023. Its exports have fallen by nearly 14% this year. And US's number one trading partner is no longer China, but has been replaced by Mexico. So China releasing its new standard maps right now is basically a deflectionary tactic by China to throw off the spotlight from its crumbling economy. It's a massive exercise in face saving. This is of course a time-tested formulation. What do you do when you have domestic troubles? You throw off the spotlight. You give the world something else to munch upon. And of course, what happened in BRICS is also very important. I call it the pie-in-the-sky dreams of China. China faced a massive setback with not being able to rope in Pakistan alongside the 6 new members that have been welcomed into the BRICS community. Secondly, with de-dollarization, and if a new BRICS currency had been introduced, the Chinese yuan would have been strengthened further. That pipe dream of China has also crashed and burned because now the BRICS intends to trade and transact in their respective domestic currencies. So overall then, it's been a huge array of setbacks to China, one after the other. The funny thing is that when Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping met at the BRICS Summit, Xi committed to amicably discuss the border issues, to resolve them. Instead, what they go on to do is to release a set of inaccurate and misrepresented maps. And finally, China's timing of releasing these maps is important because of the G20 angle. China would not want India's stature to grow. It is already insecure about the world spotlight being on India with its G20 presidency underway, and the global leaders representing nearly 60% of the world population being in attendance of the summit. President Xi is obviously seeking an easy way out of attending the summit at New Delhi, having neither confirmed nor denied his attendance of the event. And we need to understand that for the People's Republic of China, President Xi is the ultimate god, not a demigod, but the highest god. Not a rock can be moved without his consent. Now if their god and supreme commander steps into an arena with other gods, his prestige will dip. The attention he thinks he deserves will obviously be diverted and divided. So these new maps give him an ungracious reason, but a reason nonetheless to not be in attendance of the summit. To sum it up then, the Chinese releasing these maps at this juncture is important in three regards. The Chinese economy is crashing and it wants to move away the spotlight from its domestic concerns. Secondly, it wants to shift away the spotlight from the global embarrassment it faced during the BRICS Summit. And thirdly, it wants to take away India's limelight during its G20 presidency. Fundamentally speaking, China has gone wrong only in not having learnt one vital lesson about warfare. In this case, psychological warfare. One must pick their enemies wisely and cautiously. China fails to remember that India is not a country to be boxed into a corner, and its diplomatic maneuvering and aggressive tactics will only get it so far at the end of the day. And that's a wrap from my side. I'll see you in my next video as promised. Stay well, stay healthy, and stay out of trouble. Over and out.